I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time.
Hello and welcome to Women Awakening. I'm your host, Cynthia James, and I get the distinct honor of bringing to my audience, to this community, extraordinary women. And when I say extraordinary, yes, they are born as ordinary human beings, but something happens. They get a calling of some kind, and that calling moves them into action in extraordinary ways. They overcome great things. They create great things. They absolutely stand in the awareness that they're here to do something to lift humanity, and many, especially women. So I'm grateful that you're here. We do these every week. We're on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, Spreaker, Amazon Video, YouTube. And just subscribe, come back every week, share the videos. I guarantee you, you will be inspired. You know, we've done over 200 of these, and there has not been one interview that I didn't walk away going, whoa, this is incredible. So today, I'm introducing you to someone new to me. Her name is Lydia Knight. She's the visionary founder of the She Center, and it's revolutionizing our culture by empowering individuals to move from self-sabotage to self-fulfillment and contribute their highest gifts to humanity. She's the creator of the Empower, Prosper, and Rise programs, and she embodies effective altruism, which initiates that uplift women and children globally. Initiatives that do that for women and children globally. We're going to really talk about that. A certified health coach, eating disorder expert, and recipient of the Sacred Service Award. Lydia's groundbreaking approach has earned recognition from major outlets like CBS, NBC, Fox News, Yahoo, and beyond. Lydia, thank you so much for being here.
Cynthia, I am so thrilled to be here, and I love the way that you speak into the truth of who we are as women and how bright and called we are, and it's just beautiful, your message.
Thank you so much. Well, I want to start with how kind of I've always start. How did you grow up? I mean, you know, you probably didn't come on the planet going, "Oh, I'm going to be a woman who creates programs for women." How did you grow up?
Yes, oh, you're right. I did not come out of the womb being like, this is what I'm gonna do. So I grew up in a unusual way. So I'm actually a cult survivor. And I grew up in that mentality, in that environment. So throughout my life, like I had a period where things just got turned upside down because within a few years, I left a cult, I left a misogynistic religion, I left an abusive marriage, I ended an eating disorder, and I left a toxic corporation. It was a really disorienting and untethered and really important chapter. And so those were some of the ways that I grew up and also some of the structures that I left. And it was hard and also important.
Oh, well, yes, yes to all of the above. But I just want to say this. What was the moment you realized you were in a cult and it was off?
That's a great question. You know, a lot of times we don't have language for the situation that we're in. We have a feeling like something is not right, or we have a difficulty, operating or growing the way that we want because things are holding us down. But it wasn't until really after I left that I had that language of cults because, you're never in a cult and people are like, welcome to our cult. You're in a community with a strong charismatic leader and a very strong story and a lot of fear. And so that was part of the deconstructing, the reprogramming of knowing that the situation was bad, mustering the courage to leave, and then looking back and examining that and being like, oh, that's what that was. That was that common experience. And I think that a lot of things that we move through are like that. I didn't know I had an eating disorder for almost the whole time I had an eating disorder. I just knew I was my own kind of crazy and I would start eating and I couldn't stop. And so I think this message and having that common language is so important because when women compare notes, the world really changes. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, I'm over here having a little coughing thing. Um, yeah, but it's so I want to talk about the fact that oftentimes we're immersed in something and
Mhm.
are clueless that it is not for us, that it is not healthy for us. And so when you started getting that, you know, what were your first thoughts?
Yeah. So when that first started, it was confusion. It was seeing people that didn't believe what I believed or what I was taught was the only way to believe, and seeing that they were happy and they seemed authentic, even though I was told that you couldn't be happy outside of the structure that I was in. And so being exposed to a diversity of people, I think is so important because it allows you to be able to see like, okay, there's a clash with my worldview. There's really a confusion here because I am seeing signs that I trust that don't match up with what I've been told. And for me, that was one of the first things that came up.
Well, it's so beautiful. So I really want to talk about the eating disorder and how that led you to create something that could support other people that were um, challenged in crisis and doing things that were not supportive, but they couldn't help it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I developed an eating disorder that was destroying my life. I didn't have the language for it then, but I would just eat out of control. It really did feel like I couldn't stop, and it was completely counter to my identity. I was a health coach that had a secret life where I was binge eating and then starving myself and then binge eating again, and it kept on getting worse. And this was such a profound lesson for me that I know that so many of us have, as women have learned is that the darkest times in our life oftentimes create the most incredible gifts and contributions to the world. Not that we needed to go through trauma to become who we are, but it's who we are and the way we responded to that trauma that has created this incredible strength. And so it's fascinating to me that in facing an eating disorder that was right in front of me and seeing that there were no good solutions. It was all, you are broken, you will always be broken, you'll just manage this for the rest of your life. There's no way out of it. And I just refuse to live that way. I'm like, there must be a way for this to just be a non issue. And so after trying so many things under that mentality that, failed over and over, I turned to my experience leaving a cult. And I thought, what if I treated this eating disorder like programming, like subconscious programming, just like I had to deconstruct, deprogram from my cult days? What if I treated it like that, like a habit of my thoughts that I could break? And Cynthia, in 1 week, I was free of my eating disorder and I have been free ever since.
Wow, well, I love that because here's the thing. I know so many people, but women especially, that their relationship to food is about comfort on some level, even though it may not be comfortable. And so that you could get clear about your mindset and tether it to something that you had already done that had succeeded and use the principles of that to move forward. So is that what your programs are built on?
Yeah, great question. So, yes, it's really interesting because like you said, so many of us associate food with comfort or control or, we can list it. But what that often does is it puts us on this path where like we are going to go on a journey and try to analyze and find out all of the reasons why we have this relationship with food versus just directly looking at what are the habits of thought that are driving this relationship with food and actually going upstream and just breaking the cycle on a thought level because
Yes.
nothing is as sustainable as doing what we want. And when we don't want to overeat, when we don't want to binge, when we don't want to starve ourselves,
Right.
then that's the most sustainable thing. So when you really get to the core of what's happening, so yes, all of our programs are really based off of the core principles of when essentially the only obstacle we have is the way that we are thinking about the problem. And the solution is when we change our thinking about it.
Yeah. So tell me about Empower, Prosper, Rise.
Yes. So, Empower is our specific framework for ending an eating disorder. This is an 8-week intensive where, even if it's been decades of struggling with food, it's about just getting it done and having it be a non issue. So, this is like we are going to deconstruct, reprogram, change your relationship with food so that it's just a non issue. And prosper and rise are the next steps where once you fixed this big thing in your life and you have that injection of like hope and power and like, yes, I finally did it, and you have a foundation of those principles of how to change your brain, then in prosper, we start looking at different areas of life. How do our thought patterns apply to relationships or apply to abundance or apply to, really our confidence? And then rise is the highest level of that, where it's the process of becoming your highest self, but all based on it starts at the core of who we are and our thought patterns and us taking charge of those.
Yeah, so we're talking about deep self-love here.
Yeah, that is a great way to sum it up. Deep self love.
I mean, I just think it's so beautiful. I mean, especially, how what kind of people come to you? You know, are there people in crisis? Are there referrals? Or I mean, what kind of people come to you initially?
Yeah. So this is a really great thing to ask about because so many of us have a stereotype in our mind of what being in crisis or eating disorder looks like. We think of maybe a young 14-year-old girl that doesn't eat enough. And the fact is that 75% of women struggle with disordered eating. It is a huge problem that most women are currently facing. And it comes in all ages and it comes in all sorts of different backgrounds. And so the women that come to us are extremely successful C suite level career women, or mothers of 8, or women in college, like coaches and health coaches, and also people who are a whole range of different shapes and sizes. So it really is an issue that isn't leaving any demographic out. So we have a lot of different kinds of women come to us. And one of my favorite things about this is that we have communities where women who would have never interacted with each other are brought together from all around the world. And there are these deep running friendships in this tribe that you found with someone that you would have never met if you didn't both decide to change your lives.
That is so beautiful. Okay, so I want to come back to you for a moment. So you've gotten out of this cult, you've overcome this eating disorder, you've started this business. What's the best part of your life today?
Oh, that's a wonderful thing to think about. Thank you. Oh, I have a really good life. I am grateful every single day for the internal experience that I get to have. Externally, I would say the greatest part of my life is this home. I wanted a home my whole life. I grew up in incredible poverty. And every day I wake up and I look at my home and I look at our little hobby farm and our chickens and this beautiful land. And it just fills me with joy because this was the thing I worked my whole life to manifest. And I would say my favorite thing internally is the inner peace and freedom that really comes from, like you said, Cynthia, this deep self love and the fact that that's something that can be replicated. That's something that I enjoy and love and that I can also give. And I think those are some of the most rewarding things in life.
Well, That's beautiful to hear. And just looking at your screen, I see the level of love that has been put into your space. And and so can you talk to us about empowered women? You know, I do a lot of work with women, and a lot of them don't feel like they have a voice, or if they have a voice, they're afraid they're going to be too much or not enough, or they don't know how to stand up for themselves or how to walk into a space. Even celebrity women are talking about this whole thing that they're going through in terms of bringing their powerful self and not being judged, or even if they are judged, managing it. So talk to me from your perspective. What's an empowered woman?
Yeah. Oh, and it really is like such a universal struggle where you named it so beautifully. It's the fear of, am I going to be too much or not enough? And look at how those are on two different ends of the spectrum, but it's the same sort of insecurity. It's the same sort of lack of empowerment. So at the She Center, one thing we talk about is a centered life. And that centering is about not being on one extreme or another. So when you talk about really being empowered, some of the default ways, like the first attempts that we have at being empowered, is to look at patriarchy and then try to play that game well. Like, I'm going to hack a system that wasn't created for me. I am going to try to perform in patriarchy to get all the patriarchy points, and then I will be empowered because I got all the points from the system. But what we know is that an empowered woman is someone who has stepped outside the system
Yes.
and
Yes.
created her own rules and created her own value. And because you're outside of that system, then your self love, your confidence, your empowerment can't be shaken by anything around you because they're not playing the same game as you.
That is so true. I just finished reading Barbara Streisand's memoir,
Mhm.
and I've always loved her as an artist, and I've always loved the accomplishments. But I had no idea from the time that she was a teenager, she always felt like compelled to stand for herself and her visions and her desires and her dreams beyond what other people thought, because a lot of people thought she was kind of odd. And I think a lot of us who are these independent thinkers and these creative people, wonder, what am I doing here? I do not fit. I do not belong. So I guess I want to talk about how you feel about the fact that no matter what, women belong.
Yeah. There is no right way to be a woman in a patriarchal structure. Literally no right way. You can try to look perfectly and talk perfectly, and there's nothing that can be enough. Like, it's a structure that is created for us to lose. And there's a $78 billion diet industry. Like, women's insecurity and self-loathing is a massive and profitable industry in so many different ways. So really, that unshakableness where you are knowing that you are enough and you are knowing that nothing can take that away from you. Part of it is the rejoicing when you don't fit in. It's like, oh, good. Honestly, I think back, Cynthia, and I think, if I would have really felt like I fit in, would I have ever left the structures I was in?
Yeah,
And part of that spark of like, nothing is good enough, I don't quite fit in, was the impetus to look outside. That saved my life. So every time you don't feel like you fit in, rejoice. It's a good sign.
absolutely. I looked at last year and I said, okay, this is the year of the woman. Okay, there's Taylor Swift out there, there's Beyonce out there, there's Barbie out there making the most money. There's all these women, and all of these women on some level stepped out of that patriarchal thing and said, I'm going to create something new. I'm going to bring something new. I,
Oh,
I
yeah.
I just love this. Tell me how people find you and your amazing work.
Yeah, so we actually have a whole page of goodies just for your audience. So We have made a collection of some of our very best resources, whether it's becoming a centered leader and talking about authentic female leadership, or a fun little quiz that helps you to know your relationship status with food. Like, we have some really fun things that we brought together for you guys. So if you go to podcast.theshecenter.org/Women Awakening, then all of those will be there for you. We'll update it as we've got more fun things coming out. And it's just going to be a fun adventure. So that's what we have for you guys all put together, and enjoy.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for doing that. I love it when the audience is gifted with things that can help them move to other levels. I want to say to you that I have the same last question for every guest. This show is called Women Awakening. What do you think is the most important thing for women awakening on this planet in this moment?
To start listening more and trusting in the authentic voice internally that has always been there, that is ours, and paying more attention to that than the voice that has been put in our minds by our parents or society or patriarchal structures, and to really get to know the voice that is our voice and follow that. I think that's one of the most important pieces of continuing to awaken.
Well, couldn't agree more. And thank you so much, Lydia. I'm so inspired by what you do and your passion and your light, and that you've taken control of your life. It's a blessing to know you.
Agreed. Thank you so much, Cynthia. What a beautiful mission that we're a part of.
Exactly. Okay, so ladies, I'm going to say the same thing I say to you every week in a different way. It's about now. It's about loving yourself now. It's about seeing yourself now. It's about honoring yourself now. It's about tapping into that authenticity that lives within you that will not be denied now. You don't have to wait for anyone or anything to manifest the life that is fulfilling and filled full of so much joy and harmony. You are important and you matter. And I'm so grateful that we get to walk this path together. Thank you so much for being here. Take good care, and I'll see you soon.